Step away from the vehicle.
No!
Hands where I can see them.
Officer, this is my car. I am a judge, and you are making a serious mistake.
A judge? Yeah, right. You don't belong.
I am not resisting. This is unlawful. The words were calm, controlled, almost clinical. Not the voice of a man trying to escape trouble, but the voice of someone who understood exactly what trouble looked like. It was a clear Tuesday morning in the Kingswood district, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city. Tree-lined streets, designer storefronts, expensive cars parked neatly along the curb. Nothing out of place, nothing urgent, until one thing caught a police officer's eye. A black man, a luxury SUV, a high-end stroller. To most people, it was an ordinary scene. A grandfather finishing an errand, wrestling with a complicated stroller before heading off to work. But from inside a slow-rolling patrol car, the picture looked different. Officer Daniel Rowe was on proactive patrol. No calls, no suspects. Just time to observe and decide what didn't belong. The Audi was new, the stroller was expensive, and the man loading it didn't fit the story Rowe expected in a neighborhood like this. The officer didn't run the plates. He didn't check with dispatch. He didn't ask the boutique next door if anything had been reported missing. He made a decision. The cruiser pulled in fast behind the SUV, blocking it in. No lights. Just a sharp blast of the siren meant to startle. Meant to assert control. The man froze for a moment, then turned slowly. He didn't run. He didn't panic. He didn't raise his voice. He simply adjusted his suit jacket, looked at the officer, and waited. That calm, measured, unafraid, irritated Rowe instantly. In his experience, innocent people were nervous. Guilty people were quiet. What he didn't realize was that this wasn't the calm of guilt. It was the calm of someone who had spent a lifetime enforcing the law and had no idea he was about to be treated like someone who didn't deserve its protection. The man by the Audi was Marcus Hale, 57 years old. His hair was silver at the temples, his posture straight despite the years. He wore a tailored navy suit, polished shoes, and a simple watch that cost more than most people's rent. He wasn't dressed to impress. He was dressed for responsibility. Moments earlier, he'd finished helping his daughter strap her toddler into a car seat. The stroller imported, expensive, frustratingly complicated, had taken longer to fold than he'd expected. He'd frowned at it, muttered under his breath, then finally wrestled it into the trunk. Now, he stood still, hands visible, breathing steady. Officer Rowe stepped closer. His boots crunching against the pavement, he didn't greet the man. He didn't ask if he needed help. Instead, he looked at the stroller, then the car, then the man. "Is this your vehicle?" Rowe asked sharply. "Yes," Hale replied without hesitation. His voice was low, calm, controlled. "It is." Rowe narrowed his eyes. "You having a lot of trouble with that stroller," he said. "Not a question. An implication. It's new," Hale answered, "and unnecessarily complicated." Rowe smirked. To him, this wasn't small talk. It was probing, testing. "You got a receipt for it?" The question hung in the air. Hale blinked once. Slowly, processing the absurdity. "A receipt," he repeated. "No, officer. It belongs to my family." Rowe took another step forward, closing the space between them. "Expensive stroller. Expensive car. High theft area," he said. "People steal things fast around here." Hale recognized the shift instantly. This was no longer curiosity. This was accusation. "Officer," he said evenly, "if there's a concern, my identification is in my jacket pocket. I can show it to you." Roe's jaw tightened. Don't reach for anything. He snapped. Hale's hands stayed exactly where they were. I'm not resisting, he said calmly. I'm trying to comply. And in that moment, the line was drawn. One man believed authority came from a badge. The other believed it came from restraint. Neither yet understood how far the situation was about to spiral. Officer Roe's eyes never left the man's hands. To him, stillness wasn't cooperation. It was defiance wearing a polite mask. You, standing around here a long time, Roe said, looking around. That's suspicious. Marcus Hale kept his voice steady. I was trying to fold a stroller. Roe glanced at the boutique behind them. High-end glass. Designer signage. You come out of that store, he asked. No. Hale replied. My daughter did. I stayed with my grandson. Roe nodded slowly, pretending to consider the answer. In reality, he'd already dismissed it. Step away from the vehicle, he ordered. Hale didn't move. Officer, he said calmly, I'm standing next to my own car. If you believe I've committed a crime, you need to tell me what it is. Roe's posture stiffened. His voice hardened. I don't need to explain myself to you. He snapped. I'm telling you to step away. Hale exhaled slowly, not in frustration, in recognition. He had heard this tone before. In courtrooms, in transcripts, in cases where power crossed the line. I am not being detained unless you can articulate reasonable suspicion, Hale said. At the moment, you have not. That was the moment the interaction changed. Roe felt it immediately, the shift from control to challenge. You one of those people who think they know the law? Roe sneered. I do. Hale replied simply. Roe took another step closer. Their shoulders were nearly aligned. You don't get to question me. Roe said, that badge means something. So does the Constitution. Hale answered. A few pedestrians had slowed. One woman stopped entirely. A man across the street raised his phone. Roe noticed. The presence of witnesses didn't calm him. It cornered him. Hands where I can see them. Roe ordered again. And don't move. Hale complied without argument. I am not resisting, he said clearly. Loud enough to be heard. But I am telling you this stop is unlawful. Roe's jaw clenched. To him, those words weren't a warning. They were a challenge. And Officer Roe had never backed down from one. Marcus Hale paused for half a second. Not because he was afraid, but because he understood exactly where this was heading. Officer, he said evenly, before this goes any further, you should know who you're speaking to. Roe let out a short, humorless laugh. Oh yeah, he said. Here we go. My name is Marcus Hale. The man continued. I am a judge. Family court. The words landed softly, calmly, without pride. Roe didn't hesitate. A judge. He scoffed. Sure you are. He glanced at the tailored suit, the expensive watch, and shook his head. Anybody can buy a nice suit, Roe said. Doesn't make you special. Hale kept his hands visible. His tone never changed. If you run the plates on this vehicle, he said, you'll see they're registered to me. Judicial designation included. Roe didn't move toward his radio. He didn't look at the license plate. He didn't ask for confirmation, because confirmation meant the risk of being wrong, and Roe could not afford that. You don't get to tell me how to do my job. He snapped. Step away from the vehicle. Now. I will not. Hale replied. I have done nothing illegal, and I'm not surrendering my property without cause. Roe stepped closer, chest nearly touching Hale's shoulder. You think that little title scares me? He said quietly. Out here. My badge is the only thing that matters. Hale looked directly at him. No, he said. Out here. Restraint is what matters. That sentence hit Rowe like a slap. A small crowd had formed now. 2 phones were clearly recording. Rowe felt it the eyes. The judgment. The moment slipping away from him. He leaned in. You're making this harder than it needs to be. He hissed. Hale lowered his voice. And you're making a mistake that will end your career. That was it. Rowe's face tightened. His jaw locked. In his mind, there was only one way to regain control. And it didn't involve listening. Officer Rowe moved first. Not to his radio, not to his notebook, but forward. His hand shot out, grabbing Marcus Hale by the shoulder with sudden force. Turn around. Rowe barked. Do not touch me. Hale said sharply, his voice dropping an octave. You have no legal basis. Rowe didn't let him finish. He spun the older man hard, using the momentum to shove him forward. Hale stumbled, his balance broken for a split second. Then came the impact. Hale's shoulder slammed against the side of the Audi with a loud metallic thud that echoed down the street. The car rocked slightly. The sound drew gasps from the small crowd that had gathered. The stroller half folded. Half resting in the trunk was knocked loose. It toppled backward, hit the pavement, and rolled clumsily toward the curb. Hey, someone shouted. What are you doing? You're under arrest, Rowe yelled. His voice, sharp and loud, meant as much for the witnesses as for Hale. Stop resisting. I am not resisting, Hale said through clenched teeth, pain flaring in his shoulder. This is unlawful. You are assaulting me. Rowe twisted Hale's arms behind his back, yanking them upward. Hale winced but did not fight. He knew exactly how this would be written later if he did. Rowe snapped the handcuffs shut tight. Too tight. Deliberately so. For what Hale demanded, for loading my own car, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct. Rowe rattled off, the familiar catch-all charges rolling easily off his tongue, and suspicion of theft. That stroller belongs to his family, a man in a business suit shouted, holding up his phone. I saw the whole thing. Rowe spun around, pointing. Back up. He yelled, or you're next. The crowd fell silent, but the phones kept recording. Hale stood still, cuffed, his hands numb, his breath controlled. I am not resisting, he said again, clearly, loudly. I am complying under protest. Rowe didn't hear restraint. He heard defiance. And in his mind, defiance had to be crushed right here, right now. Officer Rowe didn't give Marcus Hale time to recover. He gripped the chain of the handcuffs and pulled, forcing Hale to stumble forward toward the patrol car. Walk, Rowe ordered. Hale moved carefully, guarding his shoulder, keeping his balance. As they reached the cruiser, Rowe shoved him forward and pressed his head down hard against the doorframe the practiced motion officers used to assert dominance. Watch your head, Rowe muttered, without slowing his grip. Hale was pushed into the back seat. The hard plastic molded against his back. The metal divider inches from his knees. The door slammed shut with a heavy, final sound. Inside the cage, the world went quiet. Hale adjusted his position slowly, feeling the handcuffs bite into his wrists. His fingers tingled. His shoulder throbbed. But his breathing remained steady. He wasn't thinking like a victim. He was thinking like a lawyer. Time 1022 A.M. Officer Daniel Rowe. Charges stated without cause. Multiple witnesses filming. No Miranda warning. Outside. Rowe circled the Audi once more. He picked up the stroller from where it lay near the curb and tossed it carelessly onto the sidewalk, not even bothering to secure it back into the trunk. He didn't look back at the crowd. He didn't look back at Hale. He climbed into the driver's seat and pulled away. As the cruiser rolled down the street, Rowe glanced up at the rearview mirror. "You know," he said casually, almost conversational, "if you people would just learn to cooperate, things wouldn't end like this." The words landed heavy. Hale stared straight ahead, his reflection faint in the glass. He said nothing. He didn't argue. He didn't react. He memorized the sentence. Rowe mistook the silence for submission. He didn't realize that every second of this drive was being filed away not emotionally, but evidentiary. For Rowe, the trip to the precinct felt like a victory lap. For Marcus Hale, it felt like the beginning of the end, just not his. The patrol car rolled into the sally port of the 4th Precinct. The metal garage door lowered behind them with a hollow echo, cutting off the daylight. Inside, the air smelled like stale coffee and disinfectant. Phones rang. Keyboards clicked. It was a normal morning until it wasn't. Officer Rowe stepped out first, confidence back in his stride. He opened the rear door and grabbed Marcus Hale by the arm. "Out," he ordered. "Don't trip." Hale stepped down carefully. His wrists were stiff. His shoulder burned, but his posture remained upright. They walked through the heavy doors into the booking area. At the front desk sat Sergeant Paul Miller, a veteran with 3 decades on the job, gray hair, reading glasses, a man who'd seen every version of a bad arrest imaginable. Rowe marched Hale forward. "One male," Rowe announced loudly. "Resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and suspicion of theft. Refused to cooperate at the scene." Miller didn't look up right away. "All right," he said absently. "Put his property on the counter." Rowe dumped the wallet, keys, and phone down hard, then nudged Hale forward. "Here's your suspect." Miller finally raised his head and froze. His eyes widened. His pen slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the desk. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Miller stood up so fast, his chair rolled backward. He stopped himself. "Judge Hale." The room went silent. Every officer within earshot turned to look. Rowe blinked. "Once. Twice. Sarge," he said quickly. "This guy's lying. He said he was a—" "Shut your mouth," Miller snapped, his voice sharp and absolute. He rushed around the desk, already reaching for the handcuffs. "Marcus," he said quietly. "My God." "Good morning." "Paul," Hale replied calmly. "I believe your officer has made a serious error." Miller's hands trembled as he unlocked the cuffs. Rowe stood frozen. The badge came out next. Gold. Heavy. Real. It landed on the counter with a soft metallic clink. And in that moment, Officer Rowe finally understood. He hadn't arrested a suspect. He had arrested someone who decided custody cases. And the consequences were about to be immediate. The silence in the booking area was suffocating. Officer Rowe's eyes darted from the gold badge on the counter to Sergeant Miller's face. The confidence he'd carried in moments earlier drained from him, replaced by something raw and unfamiliar. "Judge Hale," Miller said quickly, his voice lower now. Respectful. "Are you injured? My shoulder is in pain." Hale replied evenly. "And my wrists were cuffed excessively tight." Miller clenched his jaw. "I'm calling the captain. Right now." He didn't ask permission. Within minutes, Captain Laura Bennett stepped through the doors. She took in the scene in seconds, Hale rubbing his wrists, Miller rigid with anger. Rowe standing off to the side, pale and silent. "Judge Hale," Bennett said, choosing her words carefully. "I'm deeply sorry this occurred." "I don't want an apology," Hale replied. "I want this documented. Immediately. And I want a formal complaint filed before I leave this building." "Of course," Bennett said. "Absolutely." Hale turned slightly, his gaze settling on Rowe. "I'd also like my grandson's stroller retrieved," he added. "Officer Rowe left it unattended on the sidewalk where he arrested me." Miller's head snapped toward Rowe. "Is that true?" he demanded. Rowe swallowed. "Yes." "Aye, sir." Captain Bennett's expression hardened. "Officer Rowe," she said, her voice flat. "Remove your badge and your firearm. Place them on the counter." Rowe hesitated. "Now," Bennett repeated. With shaking hands, Rowe unholstered his weapon and set it down. Then he reached up and unclipped his badge, the symbol of authority he'd wielded so freely just an hour earlier, and placed it beside the gun. The sound echoed louder than it should have. "You are being placed on immediate administrative suspension." Bennett continued. "You will not speak to anyone about this incident. You will not access your phone. You will wait in the conference room until Internal Affairs arrives." Rowe nodded numbly. As he turned away, other officers watched in silence. This wasn't just discipline. This was exposure. And everyone in the room understood one thing clearly. The story wasn't ending here. It was only beginning. By the time Marcus Hale left the precinct, the damage was already spreading. What Officer Rowe didn't know, what he couldn't control, was that at least 3 bystanders had filmed the arrest from different angles. The shove, the handcuffs, the stroller crashing onto the pavement. One of those videos went live less than 30 minutes later. The caption was simple: "Cop arrests black man for loading stroller into his own car." Within an hour, it had tens of thousands of views. By lunchtime, it had hundreds of thousands. People slowed the footage down. They replayed the moment Rowe grabbed Hale. They isolated the words "you people" and shared it again and again. Comment sections exploded. "This could have been my father. This is racial profiling." He never resisted. Then, a local reporter asked a single question that changed everything. Who was the man in the video? When the answer came back, Marcus Hale, chief judge of the family court, the story detonated. National outlets picked it up within hours. Headlines shifted overnight. Not questionable arrest. Not police misunderstanding. But police officer arrest sitting family court judge. City officials scrambled. The police department issued a brief statement promising a full and transparent investigation. Bystanders P.M. The mayor stood at a podium, flanked by advisors, offering a public apology to Judge Hale and his family. But the public wasn't satisfied with apologies. They wanted consequences. And for the first time, the department knew this wasn't a story they could quietly manage. This wasn't going away. The department tried to slow the story down. Internal Affairs announced a review. The union released a carefully worded statement about due process. Lawyers spoke in neutral language, hoping time would dull the outrage. It didn't. Within days, Judge Marcus Hale filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city and the police department. The complaint was precise, methodical, devastating. Unlawful detention, excessive force, false arrest, racial profiling. The evidence was overwhelming. Multiple bystander videos, dashcam footage, body cam audio capturing the moment. Officer Rowe said, "You people." The city knew it couldn't win. 3 weeks after the arrest, Officer Daniel Rowe was terminated. No quiet transfer, no paid leave, no return. The badge was gone. But Judge Hale didn't stop there. He refused a quick settlement. He demanded policy change. After months of negotiation, the city agreed to a $5, $1 million settlement and a consent decree that forced structural reform. Suspicion-based stops now required written justification. Supervisors had to review escalation decisions. Qualified immunity was limited in cases of clear constitutional violations. It was accountability written into policy. For the department, it was damage control. For the city, it was a reckoning. For Judge Hale, it was only part of what justice required. 2 years later, the noise had faded. The headlines were gone. The protests had moved on. Another story had taken its place in the public cycle. Marcus Hale was retired now. On a quiet afternoon, he sat in the study of his home, sunlight filtering through tall windows, watching his grandson push toy cars across the rug. The room was peaceful, safe, but his thoughts often drifted back to that Tuesday morning. Not to the arrest itself, but to the moment just before it. The moment when he stood beside his car, folding a stroller, believing that success and status had finally insulated him from the fears he'd grown up with. He had been wrong. The handcuffs had reminded him how quickly dignity could be stripped away, how thin the line was between citizen and suspect. He didn't hate Officer Rowe. He understood him. Rowe was a product of a system that rewarded aggression, tolerated bias, and called it proactive policing, a system that trained officers to control first and explain later. What haunted Hale wasn't his own outcome. It was the thought of men without his title, men who didn't carry a badge in their pocket, men whose names weren't recognized at booking desks, men who were arrested, charged, and forgotten. They didn't get apologies. They didn't get settlements. They got records. And Hale knew that for every case like his that reached the light, dozens never did. Justice, he realized, was still unevenly distributed, and that was the part that stayed with him. Marcus Hale had the power to fight back. He had the education to name the violation, the status to be believed, the platform to force change. And even for him, justice came slowly. So the question isn't whether Officer Rowe was punished. He was. His career ended. His badge was taken. His name became a cautionary tale. That's accountability. The real question is simpler and far more uncomfortable. What happens to the men who don't get recognized at the front desk? What happens to the fathers, the grandfathers, the working men who load groceries, tools, or strollers into their cars and don't have a judge's title to protect them? They don't get press conferences. They don't get settlements. They don't get policy reforms named after them. They get silence. A badge does not grant moral authority. It demands responsibility. And respect is not something taken by force. It is something earned through restraint. Until every citizen can exist in public space without being treated as a threat, until compliance is not mistaken for guilt, until justice does not depend on who you are. We are not there yet. So what do you think? Should police officers be personally liable for civil rights violations? Does authority come from power or from accountability? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe no one should be above the law and no one beneath its protection, share this story. Because silence only protects the system. And stories like this are how change begins.